Hey, welcome to the show.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Love and Beyond the I Do podcast.
With your hosts, Jason and Tina Marie.
That's me, and this week we have our special guests with us. We have Bob and Trisha DePasquale. How's it going, guys?
We are great. It's great to be on the show. Love y'all's intro to the show. It's nice and jumping, getting me excited.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Thank you for having us.
Sure.
Get you nice and relaxed.
That's right. It's just real conversations. That's all.
That's right.
Nothing new, right?
So don't let the intro scare you off. So this is just our conversation into your background, into your marriage. So tell us a little bit about yourselves.
I'll start. So we've been married almost 14 years now.
Okay.
And it's been one of those things where you look back and we're still in love with each other, but it's hard to believe it's been 14 years. It's crazy. It goes by real fast. And we actually met on a mission trip and we dated long distance for a while. And when we moved in and got married and moved in with each other and did the whole living thing together, we'd assumed that we'd be around together this long, but man, time flies, right? I mean,
It
gosh.
does.
It does. Now,
I feel like we were just babies when we were just looking back now. I feel like, we were just babies when we got married. I was 22, just fresh out of college, and I didn't even know how to pay a credit card bill at the time. So looking back now, it's fun to look back and see, how far we've come. But I mean, on one hand, it feels like it was just yesterday. On the other hand, it feels like it was a whole lifetime ago.
I agree. I totally agree. Wow.
Now, you said long distance. How long of a distance was it?
And how long was the long distance?
Well, I was living in Michigan and going to college in Chicago at the time. And then he was down here where we live now in Fort Lauderdale in Florida.
Yeah, I had just graduated college when we started dating. And I moved back from New York. I went to school up in New York, and I moved back to South Florida for grad school. And she was still going to college in Chicago. But if you're looking for real distance, when we got engaged, it was about a year later or so, we got engaged, and she was doing her student teaching in Shanghai.
Okay.
Now, that's a distance.
Yes, now that's literally the other side of the world. So when we were engaged, I was in Florida, she was in China, and we were planning a wedding in Michigan.
My poor mom. We have to thank my mom for handling a lot of our wedding plans.
You mean you gave up all this beautiful, cold, 39-degree weather for Florida?
Yeah.
I did. Yes. At the time, it kind of just made sense. I was just out of college. I didn't have a job yet. And Bobby had just started working. And I have family that live over in China. And I saw how they jumped on an opportunity to try something different. So I decided to, come down here. But
okay.
I do miss the seasons, though. I do miss the cold weather, So I'll go up and I'll go back home and visit as often as I can. But
I know I love this.
But it was pretty nice to go to the beach yesterday. I'm not going to lie.
That really hurts. That really hurts.
Well, we had a nice skiing trip a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we had a lot of snow that shut us down, so it was wonderful. It was a lot of fun.
So what have you guys learned during this 14 years? Like what can you share with us as far as the marriage phases? Because we know marriages go through phases.
Right. So you had the dating phase, which is always fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, our dating phase, like I said, it was long distance, but it was really fun. We really spent a lot of time talking on the phone. And I don't know if you remember, but do you remember when you used to have on cell phone, your minutes were free after 9 p.m.?
Oh,
Right.
yeah. Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. We all waited for that, right?
Oh, yeah. We took advantage of that. Why don't you tell them the story about when you went to and the guy was like, "Oh, you've been making a lot of phone calls."
Oh gosh, goodness, yeah. So my mom and I, we had an issue with our cell phone or something, and so we had gone into Verizon, and they had to pull up our plan, and look at our account. And at the time, my parents didn't know just how much I was talking with this boy that I had met on this mission trip. And they pull up our account, and the guy behind the desk, like his eyes just almost popped out, when he saw how many free minutes we had taken advantage of. And he was like, "Whoa, you've been making a lot of phone calls, down in Florida." And my mom just kind of whipped her head at me and just thinking like, "Whoa, I didn't know you were talking to him so much." But it was all after 9 o'clock. We would literally
He was letting
stare
your
at our
secrets
phone
out,
and
right?
wait.
Pull up the phone records and all your secrets come out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously the dating stage was fun. Every time we got to see each other, it was really special. But I think for us too, the beginning stages too of our marriage, those early stages were just so much fun because we were no longer long distance. We were able to be with each other But that also led to a lot of different surprises, I guess, about our little quirks.
Yep.
And that's the good thing about marriage. So how long did you guys live together before you actually got married?
As we hadn't lived together before
No, we didn't
got
at
married.
all.
Oh, okay. Oh, it
Oh,
sounds
so
like
you
you
got
said,
married.
okay.
you guys went from this long distance kind of relationship, then you got married, and you moved in, and then you found out all the things that
Right.
you didn't know about
Yeah.
that you
That's
had to
the fun
live with
thing,
somebody
right.
to figure out.
See, you don't know those things over the telephone, right?
Right.
No,
That's
you
the
don't.
surprises. Yeah, that's the surprises of marriage.
Yeah.
Which that's why I'm definitely one of those people who say don't move in together, because if you move in together, you may not marry that person, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right?
Things that were cute over the phone are now like, wait.
Yeah.
So what were some of
Yeah.
the things that you guys found out about each other?
I think I know that I remember, the first time we really had a big argument, that was really difficult for us because every time we would visit each other, it was special and we,
Euphoric.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And so the first time we had an argument, I don't remember what it was about anymore, but I just remember being like so devastated that we were actually fighting. Like, what is this? And with our personalities too, like Bobby, he likes to talk about it. Like he wants to figure out the problem and talk about it and talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. This is why he has his own podcast.
And talk about it.
That's
A little more.
hilarious.
But for me, like, especially if it's late at night, like I need to be in bed at a certain time. Like sometimes I just get too worked up and I kind of forget. I don't even know how to express myself anymore. Like I just need time away from him to cool off, think about what we're fighting about, if it's really important to me, what I'm trying to tell you, what I'm trying to say to him. And so for us, a big thing was learning how to argue well together,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Now
It makes
we're great at arguing.
Like, I
Now
would want to leave.
it's like a regular thing, right? We've gotten it down pat. But that's true.
But no, I would want to leave the room, just to clear my head, and he'd want to follow me and try to figure it out. And, so we've gotten much better about that over the years,
Yeah,
just
for sure.
knowing what the other person needs to be able to work this out.
That's good. And how did you come to that conclusion? Because I know in Jason and I podcast, we talked about the difference in the personality types.
Yep.
One is being the aggressor, one is kind of the lion, one is more like the turtle. The lion just wants to talk and be in your face and kind of what's going on. And then the other one kind of retreats back into their shell and they're like, give me time to come to terms with this and I'll talk when I'm ready. But the other person,
Yeah.
and so I'm the lion. I'm the
Yep.
aggressor. I want to talk and talk. Well,
Yeah, and I'm
So-
like, give me a minute. Give
Right.
me a minute.
He's
Not
like-
just literally a minute. I mean, some time.
So he's like the turtle and he just goes into his little shell. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, we need to talk about like, what's the issue? So how long did it take you guys to kind of understand, and what did you actually come up on that on your own? Was it through reading books? Was it, or what kind of gotten you to the level of understanding what you need to do to actually approach conflict and arguing?
I would say it took us a while to figure it out, to define those roles. I mean, I think we pretty much agree that I'm the lion and you're the turtle.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
But what's funny, and if you would have asked us probably within the first couple of months of marriage, we probably would have been able to identify that, but we didn't know that. We didn't even think that those psychological profiles existed. So it took us probably years to really, right? I mean, for me to actually say, you know what, maybe I need to back off in this situation because
Yeah.
I know she's a turtle, right? Even though in the back of my mind, I know I am, but when you're worked up, you're worked up.
Right.
I think that, yeah, it definitely was a trial and error kind of thing because, I mean, the saying where they say, never go to sleep angry. Like I'm the type of person that can go to bed angry because the longer I'm losing sleep with staying up talking
getting
about
angry.
something, like the angrier I'm getting. So
Right.
I'm actually okay going to bed angry because I usually then wake up when I'm not mad anymore and I can kind of go back and think about it. But him, on the other hand, he would stay up for hours just fuming about whatever it was we were discussing. But so definitely some trial and error. Like we've kind of learned now that, he'll give me my space, but then I know that, like after a certain amount of time, like I need to be back and be ready to talk about it and be ready to express myself. I don't think we really picked up on anything like as far as seeking advice really from others. It was just kind of what we came up with on
Trial
our
and
own.
error.
Right.
work.
You just have to
Yeah.
learn one another. You have to say, well, like you said, Bob, you can continue to push, but you're pushing her away. She's not really communicating with you at that time anyway. So, things
Yeah.
you just have to learn. I mean, like Tina had to learn that I wasn't ready to talk then.
Tina had to learn.
Yeah, you had to learn. I mean,
Or you had to realize that Tina's going to keep pushing.
Tina
so you
had to learn. I had to realize. It's one and the same. So, so what happened was we just had to come to that realization.
Felt like a Mike Tyson moment when she was talking about her husband. But go ahead.
Yeah. So it was just one of those things, and I had to realize that it's okay for me not to be so verbal, because sometimes you be like, man, I'm the man. I look like I should be like hammering this out. But that's not how I was raised. That's not how we did things in the family.
I was going to say that next. So what are your backgrounds like? So do you both come from a two-parent home? And I mean that. So how did your parents actually, when you saw them argue, how did they handle it? And did that have any effect on you in your marriage?
That's a really interesting question. I've never thought about this really that deeply to compare it, but I know for my family, I know when my parents were arguing that I knew I just needed to give them space, right? And
Right.
See, and it's right. I don't think and I'm going to let you finish. I don't think we actually think about it, but subconsciously it really plays a role in how we handle conflict in our marriage. Yeah. So go ahead. So you said when they were arguing, you knew.
Yeah, I knew I had to give them space, and I was an only child, so I was a spoiled brat, and it was kind of interesting to me when they were handling their own issues. It was a little bit of a jolt to me, because it was like, all right, well, they're not, this one's not about me, right? I just need to go to my room or watch TV or whatever I could possibly do. And I noticed that their conflicts were pretty short. I don't remember my parents. I mean, they definitely had their arguments, but it was a very, very healthy, loving home. I can't complain anything there. But I would say that they definitely had some blow-ups, but they usually handled them pretty quickly. And I would say that my dad was probably the lion and my mom was probably the turtle. And I think I learned, maybe that's where I get it from. Maybe that's how I learned how to argue. I think maybe.
Yeah,
how about you?
I think if we actually take a closer look at our backgrounds, we would realize that a lot of the things that we do, our traits and how we handle conflict in anything, bills or our mate, the other person's opinion, it stems from how we were raised.
Right. It's all a learned behavior. I mean, this is what I witnessed coming up, like when my father raised his voice, it just went through the house. It's just like, and I just was like, and he was like, no, we're just talking. I'm like, I don't like that kind of talk. So maybe that's where I got it from, not really want to raise my voice and really want to go back and forth. So it's just like, because I just don't like that, all that loud
how it makes you feel.
Right.
Whereas I'm the opposite. My mom was really, really quiet, and I felt like she didn't speak up enough. So it made me, in growing up, want to be more aggressive. I'm not going to let people, in my eyes, it was more of a pushover. I guess because I'm a female. So to my mom, when she wouldn't speak up or she wouldn't do things, to me, I'm like, okay, when I grow up, I'm going to speak my mind, always whatever's on my mind, or I'm going to be more aggressive when dealing with conflict. And so, I kind of grew up like that, even through grammar school. So when boys would try to hit on me or talk to me, or, I was just really, really aggressive. I was one of those girls who didn't take much.
So, you were defensive. I get it.
I know. I came from, a very loving background with my parents. I think the world of my parents. And looking back, when I was growing up, at the times where I would overhear them arguing, one of the things that I picked up on from them was just about what it is that they're arguing about. Like, I would say probably finances were the biggest thing that they would argue about. My dad was the one that kind of handled the finances and did the majority of that. And I love him so much, have so much respect, for him. He passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago. And I know that at the time of his death, when my mom all of a sudden had to take on the role of being in charge of finances and stuff, she kind of understood where my dad had been coming from all of these years. And I think that had my dad maybe expressed himself a little bit more and, been a little bit more open about his reasoning, like why we're trying to save this money or that, it would have been more helpful in the long run. So for us, like, we try to be, Bobby and I, we try to be on the same page as far as what, how we're doing financially, what we're spending money on, things like that. So for me, it was not necessarily how my parents argued, but what it was they were arguing about to try to, prevent that from being an issue for us.
And I think, And I think now we're more open in our relationship, so we can have these different discussions. Like my family, we didn't talk a lot about finances at all. I mean, one person took care of the finances, and you kind of just got in line behind that. It wasn't much of a discussion. We can't buy this. We don't need to do this. We can do this. We can do that. So now when you get in your relationship or you get into your own marriage, now you can have these open conversations. Like, no, I want to do things just a little different. I want to have it open.
And I think going back to what I was saying about understanding, because your parents went through that with finances, you see how that kind of related in your marriage, how you're going to handle yours. Right. So it kind of made you say, you know what? Well, when my dad passed, my mom was unaware of everything that was going on. So I want to be more aware of what's going on and how it affects us and how we deal with the finances. Right.
Yeah. So many different things. Yeah. So many different things in a marriage. I mean, finance is just one part of it.
Right.
So you got to deal with so many different things.
So we're going to get down to, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I think too that like our parents' generation, it was just a different time where things were not as open as they are now. And so looking back now at that time, I can see kind of how that's kind of helped shape us, because we've had conversations early on in our relationship when we were in the dating and engagement phase. You know, we had a lot of conversations about what we'd seen from our parents and what we wanted, you know, for us.
What attracted you guys to each other? What do you think attracted? What was that? Was it instant, or was it just...
They just looked at each other and they knew, like, oh.
We remember we were on a mission trip, so it was not instant. It was not
she knew I lived in Florida. So.
There you go.
He had a really nice tan, you know. No, we were a part of this mission group. It's called Spoke Folk. So we were on a 12-day biking tour. Spoke Folk's a 12-day missionary tour that takes place in different states around the country and in the summertime, and you come together with up to 30 to 40 people from all around the country, and you live together at a church for 4 days, and you put together a worship program that you eventually will lead and do and perform for other congregations in different cities. And so on the 5th day then of the tour, you ride your bicycles to a new city, to a different church, and you put on our program that we just put together the last 4 days. And you put it on for that congregation. And then that night, after the program's over, you sleep and you spend the night at the church. And the next morning you get up and you do it all over again in a brand new city. And it's a lot of fun. You meet tons of people from around the country. Some of our best friends are, you know, scattered all over the place now.
The world, actually.
The world, yeah.
That's wonderful.
But that really, so you see the best and worst of people when you're living on top of them and, you know, living out of a suitcase for 12 days. And I think now for me, correct me if I'm wrong, for you, I don't know about you, honey, but for me, it was, you know, I think I felt like I knew the real Trisha at that point, right? It wasn't fake. It wasn't, you know, at that time, it wasn't Instagram Trisha. I mean, there's no, right? I mean, I felt like I knew the real person. I felt like she was very, very grounded. She was intelligent. She was funny, but not fake. And to me, that's extremely valuable. I mean, you know, after her faith, which is the number one most important thing in my opinion in our marriage, but after that, her natural ability just to be herself in that environment was extremely valuable. That way I knew, although we hadn't obviously lived together, we weren't married yet, so there was definitely things we needed to learn about quirkiness, but from foundational characteristics and perspective, I knew who she was, and that was attractive.
For me, it was, you know, Bobby, he did see me at my best and at my worst. I mean, when you're riding a bicycle, I mean, sometimes our rides could be up to, you know, 50 miles, 60 miles in one day. So, I mean, he definitely saw me at looking my absolute worst. And the fact that this guy still wanted to get to know me and talk to me, you know, that was definitely a bonus for me. That was a huge perk. But I think what drew me into him was his personality. He has such an outgoing personality that he can just bring anybody like in and make them feel as if he's known them, you know, their whole life. And two, he was very grounded with his faith, who he was. He had overcome incredible, you know, difficult obstacles in his life. He had cancer at 18. He was very open and honest with me about that. And it was just so easy to talk to him. He was the first guy that I had ever liked that I was just talking to him was just effortless. It just seemed like the hours just flew by. Like, you know, you saw on our phone bill.
evident
Are
in your
free from. Not only was I like to talk, but I talked for free.
That's it.
right. That's
But
right.
so we
Because
just
her parents really would have known if it hadn't been free.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Back then they were really getting people for every minute over.
Yes.
that was when you got text. You got 10 cents for every text message you sent. So we had to be careful not to send any text messages.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, so on that trip we just became really good friends with each other and with everyone else in our team, like in our group. And then when those 12 days were over, it was really difficult to say goodbye to each other and to everybody else because everyone's scattered around the country. You don't know when you're going to see them the next time.
And this happens every year. We go every summer, except for last summer,
Yeah.
and the summer we got married. We pretty much go every summer, and it's hard to say goodbye to everyone because
That's
you
wonderful.
just love them so much. And it was kind of the same thing. I mean, it wasn't. And then we just kept in touch, and before you know it, we said, this is a little bit more serious. We're talking so much, and
Yeah, so my birthday's in November, and so that year for Thanksgiving, for my birthday, I'd asked my parents if I could come down here to see him for Thanksgiving, and they were like, "What? Trisha wants to go visit a guy? Like, this
Right.
has to be serious." And so, so for my birthday, they got me a plane ticket to come down here and spend Thanksgiving with Bobby and with his parents, and the rest is history from that. We didn't know at the time how this was going to work out. We knew we wanted to be with each other, but it wasn't, but we kind of saw God's timing in all of it. After the end of every trip, it seems like one other trip would come up and we would be able to see each other, within a month or
That's
6
right.
weeks after. So
yeah. And your parents, when I came up I met her parents the first time that Christmas. That's that time of year.
Uh-huh.
I went up to Michigan, and by the way, it was blizzard. I mean, it was a blizzard, freezing cold. I was like, "What am I doing up here?"
Did you bring shorts? Is that what you packed? I'm sure you weren't prepared.
Oh, I didn't have enough. And I'll never forget this. We were all leaving, so they were actually going to fly to China to visit her sister
Okay.
and who is now our brother-in-law. They didn't have any kids yet at the moment, but so we were all going to the airport at the same time. And we were flying to Chicago O'Hare from a small airport up by their house in mid-Michigan.
Okay.
So we're actually all on the same original flight, even though once we got to Chicago, we were going our separate ways.
Okay.
But I'll never forget this. We're that morning. I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to help with all the luggage. I'm going to be the nice guy, right? And their uncle lived next door. May he rest in peace. Now he's passed on as well. But Uncle Earl, at the time, he was what, 70?
at least.
At least 70, maybe mid 70s. It's probably somewhere in the teens in temperatures. And the wind chill's even less than that. It's 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. It's horizontal snow.
Yes.
And me and Uncle Earl are lugging luggage out of the house. And I was like frozen. And this guy was just, like I said, 75 plus, just throwing luggage into the truck.
It was like
And I was like,
regular to
oh
him.
my gosh.
Isn't that the year he gave you gloves too? Didn't he give you gloves for Christmas?
I've gotten gloves as a gift 5 times.
Right. I think it's
married.
because we're, it's this thing that says if you're from Chicago, you can pretty much withstand anything, any weather.
Yes.
Like we have it all.
Yes.
If you're from anywhere up here, Michigan, Indiana,
Ohio, you can deal with anything.
So but
This
if
was
you're out
brutal.
here and it's that early in the morning, it's definitely cold.
It's the wind.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
And I bet you were thinking, why did I want to help? I know you were just
Yeah,
in your
I was-
mind, you were probably just going like, I'm freezing. I can't.
yeah,
I could just imagine the thoughts.
Yeah, I was freezing, and it's funny you say like, why did I want to help? When was I got another story. So the refrigerator incident. Was that the same trip? Okay, so the same trip. All right, so you're gonna love this one. So I get up there, and I'm only there. How long was I there? A few days,
Just a
right?
few days.
It was a few days after Christmas, and they were leaving.
Before Christmas.
A few days before Christmas, because they were going to China for Christmas. So they gotten a new refrigerator. I don't know, within the past few years, probably. But apparently, this old fridge that they had was sitting in the basement for however long. And my future father-in-law was like, "Hey, Bobby, let's help me grab this fridge." And I'm like, "What am I going to say? No."
I was so mad at my dad. I was
No.
Right,
so
you know it
mad
was
at
a
my
test.
dad.
You know it was a
It's in
test,
the
right?
basement.
It was a test.
Yeah.
He
You
was
could
testing.
Oh
say
yeah,
Hey,
no.
Hey, Bobby, help me with this fridge.
I had as a kid. I mean, like it was like a humongous thing.
It was old school, like you saw it like on the I don't know if you've ever been on the Carousel of Progress at Disney World, but like from the 40s or 50s or something. And
big old one thing that you
Yeah,
grab
yeah,
to open
we had
it.
we had to push it up the steps, And my father-in-law, and listen, I'm like, he had bad knees even at that point, and he's trying to drag the thing up the steps, and I'm underneath it at the bottom of the steps,
And you're
going
weighing
like
what?
this, trying to push it up.
So you're
Oh
how
my
tall
gosh.
and you weigh how much?
It took us, how long did it? I mean, it must have taken us a half hour just to get it up the steps, and we were exhausted. And my mother and your mom was like, she was upset that they made me do this, but
Oh, I was so mad at my dad. I was so embarrassed.
but it was fun. Whatever, we got it out. We threw it. You know what? That's it. Now they got a new fridge.
It's
So.
all good now, but he definitely proved himself.
I was
to my
just going to
family
say,
for
he
sure,
passed
really.
the test.
Right. He wanted to see if you were going to able to withstand her the whole time of marriage. He was like, let me give him this test.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what? He really showed himself to my parents. So it was that night before we were about to leave, my parents and I were still finishing up our packing. And
Oh yeah.
he ended up cooking this humongous meal for us. And yeah, this awesome dinner. And so then they were like, okay, this guy knows how to cook.
I sold him with the food. Yeah,
He's
that's
good.
it.
It always works, man. Always works.
And so what did you cook?
Was it Italian? It must have been Italian. Yeah, my last name is DePasquale, so it was some kind of spaghetti. No, it wasn't chicken parmesan.
Oh, it may have been.
Yeah, I think it was chicken parmesan. And then the funny thing about this was that my Italian family, like, you know, we drink red wine and we with it, especially with an Italian meal, right?
Right.
Well, we all set up this. I had this beautiful Italian meal, and it just allowed. I'll never forget this picture. There was, so how many of us was there? It was the three of you.
Three of us.
Yeah, it was the three of them and me, and there was, you know, 3 8 to 12 ounce glasses of milk and a glass of water for me. And I was giving a hard time. I was like, we're having spaghetti and like chicken parmesan. You guys are drinking milk?
Yeah,
So-
we needed our milk. Come on.
So
We're
that
in the
was,
Midwest.
so again, that was one of those things that you say, background, right?
Yeah.
How different families are. And we don't even think about that really in marriage. We don't even think about the background of our mate. We just kind of see the person. We want to marry them. We want to be with them.
Yeah.
Not really going into, like you said, the details of the traditions of your family, your culture,
Yeah.
and what you're used to doing. That's funny. So did you guys have wine or did you drink water?
And
I don't
milk.
even think we had wine at my
No,
house.
I don't think they had
No,
wine.
it was milk and water. That's all we needed, right?
Milk, water, potatoes, and cheese.
Right.
What's funny now, though, is you and your mom are always drinking. They always drink wine together now.
Now we do.
Yeah.
Not so much then.
Yeah, I think it's because I rubbed off on them.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
definitely.
that's all that good cooking, right?
So
Yeah.
you have how many people in your family, Trisha?
I grew up with my parents and my older sister.
So it's just
So there's
two
4 of
of
us.
you. So 2 girls though, just 2
Yeah.
daughters. And
Yeah.
so you're the only child.
Yeah, me, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And spoiled.
My parents gave up after me. They're like, that's enough.
Yes, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one and done for them. And you know what? You're an only child, like the world kind of does center around you for a while.
Absolutely.
But I did have some unique issues, health issues and things in my life. And I think that was probably the best. And God bless my parents. They loved me to death. They raised me pretty good, I guess. And they got me through college and the illness and all of that. And they ultimately ended up getting divorced, unfortunately. But I couldn't have asked for a much better home, growing up. I mean, they treated me very well. We had a dog. And that was my brother, my little Chihuahua. He was like 5 pounds. His name was Zero.
So what were some of the hard things when you guys first got together? Because I know being an only child, like you said, you're used to the universe kind of centering around you. And that's kind of hard to
You have
give
to
up.
learn how
And-
to share now.
Yeah, and you don't realize it. You
Right.
really don't see it. So you're just kind of who you are, and you're like, well, this is what it usually is, and kind of get on board. So I can imagine how that first blow up was kind of a shock to you, Trisha. So how did you guys? So what were some of the things?
First got married. I hadn't started my job yet. We got married in the summer. And so I was starting teaching that in the fall. So we were living with his mom. We lived with her for about a year and a half. She was tremendous in the fact that living with her really helped us save up because, like I said, we were just babies. I didn't know how to pay a credit card bill. I was like, oh, what is this? We only have to pay the minimum amount. Oh, okay. And he's like, no, don't do that. But, there was so much that we had to learn. And so we were living with her for the first year and a half. And one memory that sticks out for me is she came in with his laundry. She had done his laundry for him. And I was just thinking at the time, no, we don't need you to do our laundry. We can do this on our own now. Yeah. It was the 3 of us then, at home. Like I said, it helped us financially. We were able to save up. And then, a year and a half later, we were able to buy, our first home and then turn that around and fix it up. But yeah, it was just, I don't know what
The
else would you
adjustments,
say.
Well,
the adjustments. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say for me, the thing, for me, there was just certain foundational things that we had growing up that were, like tidiness and, cooking meals for dinner and sitting together and eating. And there were just certain habits and things
Right.
that were just a little bit different. Not that she didn't do them right or wrong, but like, this is the example that we still talk about this to this day. And you'll probably get mad at me for this.
Oh
But,
boy.
it's good content for the show.
It's all among friends. It's all among friends and the world. But
Yeah. So for me, when you're done eating dinner, okay,
Oh,
you
no.
take the plate and your silverware. If you haven't finished anything and you need to put it in the fridge as leftovers, or you need to throw it out, just throw it out. And then when you're in the kitchen, you're already there. You might as well go ahead and put your dish and your silverware in the dishwasher, right? I mean, why make two trips out of it? Well, Trisha has this thing where I guess what they do is in her family, the four of them would finish eating, and whoever didn't cook, their job is to clean everything. So they just pile it all up in one spot and scatter and go watch TV or whatever. And this poor person is sitting there scrubbing things down when it would, in my opinion, I'm using the word opinion because
right.
it might be so much easier if everyone just chipped in a little bit, and maybe that person's job was to tidy up a little bit. But if I would just put my dishes in the dishwasher, I wouldn't have to, it just seems easier. So that's one thing I had to learn.
That's wonderful. You guys have a great story. Like, this is actually the ultimate of getting to know each other in marriage. Like, these things I'm serious. Like, we talk about all these things and how your background really plays a key role in your marriage. So I can see how that probably would have caused some kind of conflict. And you're like, okay, I cooked, so you need to clean. And he's like, well, won't we both clean? And you're like, no, I cooked, right? So is that how the conversation kind of went?
And you know what's funny?
I think a big adjustment too for me was not only was I just, newlywed, but also moving from such a different place down here. Like, I can look back at myself now. I can look back now at that time and think like how difficult that was. I just graduated college. I was no longer with my friends, and I was far away from my family. With my sister living over in China, we rarely get the chance to see them. I'm very close to my parents. I've always been really close to them, and so being away from them was tricky too. So there was a whole lot going on.
Right.
So.
And it has to be an adjustment period. Like,
yes.
I'm sure the thoughts came over your mind, like, what have we gotten into? Like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, I'm sure, because it's such a culture shock. It's totally different of backgrounds.
Yeah, because you go from one life and then get plopped down into this one, and it's like, I don't have any family or friends around me.
Yeah, South Florida is very different than Michigan, and I think there's beauty in both places. Now, I love both places, but I do remember one time I was really frustrated about something. I don't remember what it was, but it was late at night, and I went out for a walk just to kind of clear my head, just through our neighborhood, nowhere far. And I just remember this huge like iguana just came like walking out in front of me, and I'm like, what is this? Like, where did I move to? Like, what's going on here? And I just, oh my goodness, it was just.
I don't remember that. You never told me that.
Yeah, no.
That's funny. Well, so if it was Michigan, it would have been a deer or something, right?
Yeah,
probably. Yeah.
She didn't want to tell you because she was really contemplating whether she wanted to pack up and leave.
Right, like
she
things
was like,
are crawling and
right. I'm not used to this.
Yeah, it's different.
So how has it changed? So who does the dishes now?
Well, like I said,
compromise?
There's still the
something
occasional
we're working
time
out.
where you're there. I come in after dinner, and there's still a pile of dishes in the sink.
Listen, but when he's like out of town for something, like if he's at a conference or wherever, the kitchen
She'll use
is
the
so
same
clean.
the same plate the whole week so that she doesn't have to keep.
Smart. That's just,
I'm wondering, is that like a Midwest thing? Well, I would say in the North.
So you're striking a nerve here because we still have issues with the plate. All right, I think a plate, just one.
So if you guys ever listen to our podcast, if you ever get a chance to,
she's been on me about a plate for a minute because I will leave my plate and I'm coming back for it, and she's wondering why I don't move, throw the plate away, or wash it or do whatever. I'm coming back.
But every day it's a different plate, guys. Every day. And then what he'll do is he'll forget about the plate, but it's not just in the kitchen. It's not in the kitchen. So say he wants to eat in the bedroom. So he'll have some cookies or something in the bedroom, and then he'll get up and put the plate in the bathroom
Yep.
on his way to the kitchen. Which doesn't make sense to me. So he'll put the plate in the bathroom, walk to the kitchen, maybe get some water or whatever, or do whatever, and then come back in the room, get in the bed, like, okay. And then the next day, he has to get up, shower, right, brush his teeth. The plate's still right there.
Yeah.
He'll do everything he needs to do, get ready for work, and walk right out of the bathroom into the kitchen, and the plate is still there.
Until I get a text.
And so so at first, as a wife, you just move it, right? You just move it. Okay. Oh, he forgot this.
Right.
Then about the 15th year, you go, obviously, like, if I keep moving this thing, he's not going to realize that the plate really shouldn't be here. So then I start, well, you left your plate. Oh yeah, that's right. I remember. I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
Then about the 20th year, it's like, I'm going to take a picture of it and I'm going to text it to him. Right?
Then she started texting it to the family. Right? So now my sister said, man, are you going to move this plate or what?
Right. So it's like the conversation of, because if I keep cleaning up, it's sort of like he doesn't realize what he's doing.
Oh, I
unless you kind of bring it to their attention.
And I'll tell you where it kind of came from. I was the dishwasher when we were younger. So I was the youngest. I had 3 older sisters. And Sundays were the days I didn't like them. I did not like
So
that.
they didn't do what you did in your family.
No. On Sunday,
Bob.
they dirtied up every dish that they could possibly get their hands on. Every pot, every pan, every silverware.
Not with me. He means his family.
And I had to wash dishes on Sunday.
So that means when he grew up, he didn't want to wash dishes. So when we bought our first home, of course, it had a dishwasher. Yeah. So he's like adamant about this dishwasher, and his mom is like, well, just, wash a few.
We had a few dishes. I'm like, I'm not washing any more dishes.
He would not wash dishes.
So
it's so funny, but I was going to say your story because we have a son, and he's, of course, from here, and his girlfriend is from Florida. And she's the same way. She likes clean up right after you eat and do this, and my son is like, he scatters. He's like, so it must be a northern thing. We'll
get it later.
Yeah. So and that's kind of how we do things too. It's sort of like, okay, whoever cooked, the other people have to clean. And even though it sounds kind of crazy, it just might be the difference between the North and the South. I don't know, but it definitely is a difference in. But those are things that we really don't think about in marriage. And it's things like that can really
create some problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you arguing over stuff that you shouldn't because it's just the way that you guys grew up and things are just different. That's it.
Yeah.
So he's like, "Are you going to clean up?" And you're like, "Sure." 2 or 3 days from now, absolutely. Yes. Or whenever I get ready.
Yeah. So she put me on blast on like 5 different episodes of the podcast because I didn't move this plate.
Well,
I'm gonna
that's
have
good.
to go back and catch those.
So did your dad actually help with cleaning, Bob?
Did who?
Your dad.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you say that. So my dad worked in supermarkets.
Okay.
For most of his life, and actually his whole life. I mean, after coming back from the military, I think he served in the military and in the Marines, and he got a discharge because of his foot or something, and he worked in supermarkets, and he was a grinder, and to make the supermarket look as perfect as possible. So yes, he would clean and everything, and I would go to work, you like take your kid to work day or whatever. He would be walking up and down the aisles on his hands and knees, picking stuff up, twisting bottles, right? This is after 20, 25 years of being in the business and working his way up and being, some kind of management position, still working in the store, not like a corporate manager or anything, but in charge of something. And he's always fixing. So now, like, my dad's 70 something years old, and in his kitchen, in his home, he's constantly like bending over, picking stuff up. If you have a white floor, forget it. He'll be doing up downs all day long. So yes, he would clean and spot clean and everywhere, bathroom, kitchen, you name it.
So always. Trisha, when the in-laws are coming over, do you like, oh wow, like really, I have to really clean because his dad is gonna bring the white glove, right?
Sometimes yes.
No, she just lets them clean. She's like, well, they're gonna clean anyway, so I might as well just let them do it.
We're gonna find something anyway, so
yeah.
That's funny.
It's like this is the classic, all of the background and the difference in how you were raised and how you handle things. So that give us another one. That's a very interesting story. So how do you guys do it now? Did we answer that? How do you do it now? So
Sometime
after
maybe.
dinner,
Mhm.
what happens?
I think it's more a combination. I think I definitely try to pitch in more because I know it drives him crazy. But on the other hand, too, he works out of the house now, and
Okay.
so he's home all day. I come home from school and it's 5:30, 6 o'clock or so at night, and then I'll wonder what those dishes are in the sink.
It's changed, huh?
Changed.
You're like,
Yeah.
wait, you've been home all day,
Right.
and there's dishes
Yeah,
in the
right.
sink.
So
I'm cleaning practically all day long just while I'm working or on the phone or a conference call or something. I'm walking around picking stuff up.
Doesn't
The only
seem
thing
like
I
it, huh,
really don't
Trisha?
work on, the only thing I really don't work on is she does most of the laundry.
Yeah.
I do all of the laundry.
Most.
All
Do
of
you-
it.
So is that because your mom always did it? Bob,
That's a good point.
Bob and Trisha. Yeah.
My mom did do yes. Growing up, my mom always handled the laundry, and then my sister and I would pitch in and we would help with that. Yeah, I never really gave that much thought before, but I guess that's one of the reasons why I just kind of did it automatically. And also, I liked how I hang my shirts up.
Yeah, she's picky. Of all the things that you're picky about, I'm very. It's how her shirts are hung.
Right.
We all have something, right? One of those
Yep.
corks.
Something so, but I think now, like especially with where we are right now with our careers, I think that as far as cleaning and things like that go, we kind of can feed off of each other. And if I know like he's doing a podcast or an interview or something at night, like he's definitely not going to feel like coming down and making sure everything's clean before we go to bed. So like
Sure.
I'll pitch in and I'll take the
I'll
that
just
turn.
leave it to next week. I'm like, whenever we get to it,
Yeah.
if we die, I'm not gonna say, man, I wish I would have cleaned more. Like
Yeah.
I'm just, it's a different perspective.
It
once you get
stresses you
older.
out. Cleaning
It
and stuff
does.
really kind of stresses you out. So
And I just stopped doing it because it's like I'm constantly doing it because somebody, I'm not going to name any names, but somebody like they just don't clean up behind themselves. So it's like the more I clean, it seems like the more I am cleaning.
it's like it magically happens. I mean, it just gets clean, and then I'm like, wow, this is nice. And
Let
then
me
you
put
keep
something
going.
here and here and
And then
here.
it's funny. She'll clean something, and then I'll come back and put something in the spot. She's like, I just cleaned that spot. I'm like, I know. She said, and that's why you put it there because it's clean. I'm like, absolutely. So,
You
Right?
were preparing the spot for me, right?
So,
Exactly.
so if I leave it
That's how I
dirty,
see
if
it.
I leave it dirty, then maybe he won't put it there. But then no, he'll just push it over and then find another. So I was just like,
A few weeks ago, Bobby had heard from somebody. I don't remember who you heard this from now, but you had heard about how when you leave a room, you should try to reset it and
Yeah.
Okay.
leave it the way it was when you got there. And so that's kind of helped us, I think, with
that's
just
kind
being
of
more
good in
aware
theory.
of
I'm
That's kind of like good in theory.
you know what?
I said
I'm
that to
gonna
my
try
kids.
that.
I said that to my husband. It's like good
Yeah.
in theory.
Yeah, I have good intentions sometimes. Like I'm gonna get up every morning. I'm gonna make up the bed. I'm gonna do all this.
But I should have known.
Yeah.
I should have known when I
Yeah.
was dating him. His room was a little dirty.
Yeah.
But I just
Yeah.
oversaw that, right?
Yep. You
The
thought it
things
was
you
gonna
just
change.
overlook because
Yeah.
you're like,
That wasn't
oh,
important.
No.
you're just like, oh, he's just doing that because he's in the house with his mom, right?
Yeah,
He's
Yeah.
young.
yeah.
It's a trait. It's a habit.
I didn't totally grow out of that, but
No.
I'm okay.
And then by him being the youngest and a boy, and he had all sisters, and
Just
so
a little bit
they,
spoiled.
yeah, just picking up.
Oh.
His mom kind of did everything, and
Yep.
so I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
You're the baby brother.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
just weird. Just
It's almost like
background.
being the only child. It's like I had 3 extra moms. My sisters all took care of me. So it was wonderful. I couldn't.
It kind of was because the sister that's closest to him is 10 years older than him.
Mm-hmm.
So all of his sisters are like a year apart, and then 10 years later, here he is down here.
Yep.
So they're all like teenagers, right? When you were born. So
Yeah.
10, 11, 12.
No, there was 10, 15, and 14.
Oh, there's that difference between them.
Yeah.
Them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Loretta's the
So
oldest.
just think your mom has a baby and you're like 14 years old.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
he had 3 moms, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for my youngest sister, she wanted me to be a girl, so she braided my hair and painted my nails.
I hope you have pictures of that.
I do not.
Oh man.
Yeah, I can only go on the stories.
So what do you think you can give couples who are young? Because I think it's easier, I feel that when you're younger and you learn to grow with
Compromise.
each other, compromise and grow with each other, as opposed to being older in life and then kind of stuck with your quirks. We can kind of bend a little bit, be a little
Right.
bit more flexible when we're younger
Yeah.
than when we're older. So how did you what can you give people for handling those things when you get married and you find out that they're used to doing things one way and you're used to doing things another? what's a good way to really compromise or come together? Because not everyone can do that.
No, I think compromising, that's the right word. That's the right place to go. It's not about changing the other person.
Right.
It's about understanding them. And compromise may not be the lasting solution, but at least in the beginning, you got to compromise until you kind of figure out where you all fit in together. Because I think both of us have changed in some ways since we were married, but it wasn't overnight. It wasn't like, okay, we're going to do this thing your way and that thing your way. It was, let's figure out what makes it, let's almost kind of start over together and figure out what way would make sense for both of us at the same time, right?
Yeah, I think learning how to argue well with each other was a big thing too. Like I said, because that first time I had a big argument that was just devastating to me, and you need to know what your spouse needs in return when you're like, I've now learned that he needs, me to explain myself better. He knows that I need a little bit of space to clear my head. So I think that learning how to have those arguments, because every couple is going to have arguments, let's face it, like nobody's perfect. And so, but those can make or break your relationship. So it's really an important thing to learn how to communicate with each other and figure out what your spouse needs in order to get through that.
It's funny that you mentioned that the first time you had an argument. It's like your relationship was so strong, you had a good foundation, kind of like we did. And then we never argued. We never were unhappy. It was rolling and rolling.
That's
why
they call it the honeymoon phase.
Right. Even after marriage. It was just, we were like 4 or 5 years in and things were just groovy. And then we started, disagree on some things. And it's just like, where did this come from? Now you have to relearn, you have to.
Well, I think that's what
understand.
arguing is.
It is.
What we learned is that when you start to argue, it's because there's something that's different between the two, and it needs to be reconciled. It needs to be brought to the attention of both parties in order to understand it and compromise. That's kind of what conflict is, because if you don't argue, then you don't grow because arguing creates growing. You grow in your marriage, right? Yeah. It helps you to understand each other, compromise, and then grow past that situation. Because if we don't grow in it, then we're constantly arguing over it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I would totally agree with that. Totally. That's great. That's great.
What was the strongest, or the biggest thing that you guys had to learn to compromise on?
Or
overcome?
Yeah, overcome.
Yeah. Ooh, man, that's a great question.
But whatever you want to share, not getting too personal.
I got a quick one. I don't know if it's the biggest, but this comes up a lot. Tell me. So I don't sleep very well, and I'm the type of person where it takes this is a good one. It's a process for me to go to sleep, right? So when it's time for me to go to bed, I have to be prepared. I have to do my routine before I get into bed, and then once I get into bed, it's like I need time to get my body my brain to calm down, and I'm usually listening to something or watching or anything. And for her, it's completely different. She's a rock. Bam, hit the pillow, 10, 15 seconds, maybe she's already starting to breathe heavy. Yeah, it took us, we still this is still a tough situation for the both of us, because it still takes me a while to fall asleep, and it takes her 30 seconds. I timed her once.
The one time it was I want to say maybe it was 10:25 at night, and I was like, I bet I could be asleep by 10:30, time me. And a few minutes later, he is waking me up and shaking me. He's like, honey, you did it. You fell asleep. And then I was mad that he woke me up.
Right.
Wow, this has been a big thing for us, because if I have something to do the next morning, or one of us has something we have to get up super early, or there's something important going on, it could be challenging because the other person may not be ready to go to bed or what. And I can't really fall asleep if there's other commotion going on in the house. It's very challenging for me to go to bed. So.
Yeah. So when he needs to go to bed, I also need to go to bed too, whether I'm ready for it or not. By the time if I go into the bedroom once he's already asleep and I crawl into bed, that's going to wake him up, and then he has to start his whole process all over again. But
must be the lion in us. It's kind of hard for me to go to sleep too. It's kind of hard to turn your brain off, right?
I go right to sleep. Boom, bang, head hit the pillow.
I don't even think his head hits the pillow before he sleeps. It's like this. It's like, I'm like, wow, how can you?
Jealous. I'm jealous of you.
I know, right? I really am. I really am. I'm jealous.
I'm like, what are you staying up for?
And I hate when he wakes me up. So, with him, did you hear that or whatever, or if he wakes me up and I wake up with the slightest sound.
Yep.
And then that's 2 or 3 hours, I'm trying to go back to sleep.
And
And then he gets up the next morning all refreshed. And how did you sleep? I didn't. I just went to sleep 5 minutes ago.
I'm like, what were you doing?
It's like,
yeah, that's
sometimes what I'll do is, you know when you have the dream that like you're falling and then you jerk and you wake yourself up.
right.
uh-huh.
I do that a lot, and it's usually right when he's just fallen asleep. So then he has to start the whole process over again, and he'll be like, "Honey," I'm like, I'm sorry, like I couldn't help."
And she
that."
dreams. She has the most vivid dreams, and she can recall them. And she moves, and she's all over the place. I mean,
That's funny. You know, what do you do? Do you exercise? Do you what do you do during the day? Because that comes from exercise. That comes from what you do. That's what
I teach kindergartners. I teach 5 and 6 year olds.
So she's constantly like moving, and that's actually what it's from. And I say that because our daughter is in gymnastics. And of course, a large part of her day was dealt with, flipping and practicing, and so that's the last thing that's on her mind, or it's just in her. So if anyone ever slept with her, if she got into bed with us, it's like all night she's flipping, and talking and jumping, and so. My mom came to stay with us one time, and she slept with her, and she was like, I woke up with her leg over my neck. So I just tell my mom, be careful when you sleep with her. So that's from what you do all day. It's like constantly, it's like your mind is just subconsciously repeating it and repeating it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she's a busy person. And I've slept walk once in my life, and that's the only time I ever remember doing anything. Occasional dream maybe, but I never really remember what happened.
You're like Jason. Jason doesn't remember. I remember everything. I have real clear, vivid. I dream all the time.
She does. And she's like, I had a dream and this and that. And I'm sitting there going, man, you can remember all that? I'm like, I have a dream. I may remember bits and pieces.
He doesn't. He's like, I don't think I dream.
Right.
That's what he said.
And the little bit I do is like, something happened and I did this and then I don't remember the rest. It's
it's foggy. It's foggy.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, so this is, okay, let me first of all be clear about this. Domestic violence is nothing to joke about, but she has unexpectedly swung something and woke me up and hit me before in the middle of the night. I've actually had a bruise on my hip before once. Yeah, we'll never forget that. She just, I don't know what you did, but she went.
I don't know what I saw in my dream. I'm not sure, but I woke myself up. Yeah, from hitting him.
And it was hilarious. But for the next couple of days, I was like, man, she really got me good there.
She was pretending she was asleep. That was that payback. Right. She was like, he knows that I sleep and I dream, so I'm going to see if I can get away with this.
She's definitely moving around. And so we have a cat too, right?
Uh-huh.
And the cat sleeps like a log also, right? So those two are snoring away, and I'm sitting there trying to fall asleep.
You're sitting back looking.
Yeah.
So we kind of geared off from it. So what was the big issue? Back to the question. What is, so you said, the falling asleep?
Right.
That was an issue because, and it still is, because it definitely causes problems sometimes now because, like I said, if I have to do something important the next day or she does, or if the schedules don't match up, we kind of have to figure it out. Like she's either tiptoeing around and make it seem like there's nothing going on, or same thing for me, right?
Or she has to go to bed. But she can go to bed and you're still up, right? That doesn't bother her.
Yeah. And in fact, she can go to bed just about anywhere. I mean, how many times actually, this is funny too. I don't want to get more off topic, but this is actually funny. This happens all the time. She'll fall asleep and be taking a nap somewhere in the house that's not in the bedroom, and I will not realize that she's asleep, and I'll start playing the drums. I play the drums, or I'll start calling her, Trisha, we're like asking where she is, and she'll be like, I'm sorry, I didn't even realize you were sleeping, because she just falls asleep.
I have a gift. What can I say?
So
Jason does the same thing. And he'll just go in the basement.
Right. I'll step outside the studio.
Or he's at his desk and I'll look over and he's like.
Last night I was sitting there and I fell asleep and she turned off my light for me. And then after a while, I woke up and she said, okay, now we can finish the conversation we were having.
We're having a conversation.
Right in the middle, I just fell asleep. I was just tired.
I was like, Jason, you know what? Such and such and such.
Was it a dream you were telling me?
No, I was telling you about
about the cap and gown.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I was telling him about something that was going on, and when he didn't respond, I knew he was asleep. I'm just like,
and that used to be a problem. She would get upset and be like, you're not paying attention to me. So she would get upset because, like, if she gets in the bed, she's wide awake now, right? I get in the bed, I am sleepy. So I am falling to sleep.
I'm sleepy.
She wants to have this conversation, which is fine, but then I fall asleep. which is not fine. So now she's
Yeah.
upset.
Because I'm like, how can you fall asleep if we're talking? Right?
And I tell her, baby,
Trisha, can you fall asleep when you guys are talking? You do, right?
I'm in the bed, baby.
Trisha, so Bob and I are like,
Damn.
Trisha, Jason,
Yeah.
hello.
Like, honey.
Well,
hello?
you two can call each other then while we're sleeping. So
We'll be up all night, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's happened more, plenty of times. And so honestly, that really, I mean, it's funny, but that has probably been a big thing to overcome. I'd say the other thing probably, Trisha, is probably, yeah, well, so we haven't been able, you asked us if we have kids, we haven't been able to have kids. Now we have a loving niece and nephew nieces and nephew that live in China.
Mm-hmm.
And so we try to communicate with them as much as we can, but that's caused some issues too, because there's times where, we want to speak, she wants to speak with her family, but we have something else going on, or, and sometimes it's like, okay, I got to drop everything because we may never get to speak to them for another week or month or whatever.
Oh,
right.
Yeah, definitely. I think too, especially with young married couples, like when you first get married, everyone starts asking you when you're going to have kids, and then all of a sudden, like that's like the next focus. And I think that there's a lot of pressure for young couples to feel
Absolutely.
like they have to start that. And for us too, we had wanted to have kids, and then when we found out we weren't able to, it kind of became this thing like, what, that's not going to define us.
Exactly.
We don't need to have kids in order to feel like we can make an impact on the world. So, we have found other, things that we enjoy. We travel around the world. We do
or to define your marriage. Right. Or to define your marriage, who you are, right? It was the two, that's absolutely.
Yeah, you're
and young
impacting a lot of
people,
people's life.
Yeah, and young people are still a big part of our life. With Spoke Folk, the ministry we were just talking about recently, we're still bringing teenagers on that. You teach 5 and 6-year-olds all the time, but there really was a lot of pressure. And so with my medical history, it's my fault that we can't. She's about as fertile, or at least was. I mean, you haven't been tested in a little while now, but she was about as fertile as you can get. The doctors were so excited she was so fertile when we were going to try to have kids. And so, I mean, this is a really long story, and I would be happy to share it. But in short, to get to the point, I had to do sperm banking when I was 18 before I had chemotherapy. And so my oncologist told me, you got to do this because you're going to want to, when you're 18, you're not thinking about it.
Right.
But my family went through quite an ordeal to be able to do the sperm banking. And because of the timing, and it was right after 9/11 in New York. And it's, like I said, a long story, but so we did it. And then when we just realized that we couldn't have kids naturally because I wasn't fertile, we were going to do the sperm banking. So then we had to go through in vitro fertilization to try to do it. And like I said, the doctor said, wow, we got all these eggs, Mrs. DePasquale, you're extremely fertile. And we were on this big high, like we were all excited because we had to do all this stuff, and she had to take all these hormones, and we had to do all this stuff to get her to
be ready,
pump out as many eggs as possible for them to extract them. Mm-hmm. And then it ended up not working out. We got this call from the doctor later that day. We talked to them a couple times that day, and they finally called us later that night, like at night, it was probably 8 o'clock at night, 9, maybe even later. They had been working for hours since they did the surgery to try to extract some sperm and from what was banked, and it just didn't work. And that was a really devastating time for us because we were on such a high, and then we realized it wasn't going to work. And so, the next, I don't know, it wasn't something that, ruined our life or anything for the next period of time. But there's probably a couple of year period where it took us to get over that.
Exactly.
Really.
I was going to say that. Right.
And there was so much pressure at the beginning to when we were going to start a family. Like I remember it used to bother me when people would ask, like, when are you starting a family? And I'd be like, well, we started a family July 6, 2007 when we got married. We are.
Right. Exactly.
We definitely had to kind of switch gears and stuff. But even now still too, I think that there's people, when we tell our story, like we talk about it now, like you can ask us questions. We're fine. We've gotten over, that hurdle. But even now, still, sometimes just saying that we can't have kids, like that's not a good enough answer for people. I feel like, so we automatically say something like, oh, well, we might adopt or something, we don't know yet.
Right. You feel obligated to, yeah.
My advice for married or for couples, newlyweds just starting out, like it's okay. You don't have to do what's considered the normal thing. Like know what's important for the two of you, and your marriage is definitely going to have those highs and low points, and
there was some conflict between us too, right? I mean, I don't know if it was because we disagreed so much on kids, not kids, in vitro, donor sperm, adopting, fostering, whatever. But we had some personal conflict.
I can imagine. I'm sure because
That's
you're
a tough
young and you
subject.
don't
Yeah,
know,
that's-
right? And then you're on this high, like you said.
Right.
And then to be knocked down and then not to know what to do or where to go. And then you have this outside pressures from both families and friends. So it can only do that.
Yeah, and so I'm an only child. So my parents right now don't have grandkids, so they were disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Her parents, their grandkids live in China, so they never see them, right? I mean, I thought part of the reason why I was accepted into the family is because I didn't take her daughter to China.
Right.
I only took her to
You weren't
Florida.
taking her across the country.
Right.
Yeah, so same time zone, believe it or not. And so that was something there too. And then in your family, I mean, your mom was pregnant 5 times, right?
Yeah, my mom had a few stillbirths and miscarriage.
So this was certainly something to deal with in our family on both sides for different reasons. And so
Right.
for a young couple, you really want to talk about that and think about, what are your, there's no right or wrong answer, but hey, like, what's your vision of a family going forward?
Right.
You know, I will say our families never made us feel guilty or made us feel bad about, for what happened. Like, they were obviously very sad for us and everything. But I can say now, as a teacher, I have a tremendous amount of respect for couples who decide that they are not mature enough for kids, or they just don't want to have kids or go that route. I think as a couple, you need to figure out what is going to work best for you. I've seen some really excellent examples of parenting as from a teacher standpoint.
Right.
But then I've also seen the worst of the worst.
Absolute worst. Absolutely.
And absolutely. So if there's a couple out there that just doesn't feel like having kids is the path for them, like, all power to them for recognizing that before.
And you don't have to have kids right away either. I mean, I know a guy I used to work with, him and his wife were 40 and they just had a kid. It's like the greatest thing in the world. That's cool. I mean,
right. It all, whatever works within your relationship. That's the thing.
Right.
You can't have societal pressure on you in your relationship.
Or you can't have society dictating what you will or won't do, because that adds extra pressure to the marriage. That's good.
Absolutely.
And kids add an additional strain on your relationship.
Even though they're a blessing,
Yes.
they do add an additional strain.
Yes.
For the rest of your life. It's not just the
Yes.
first 18 years. It's always.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I have to totally
I'm sure
agree.
my parents would echo that.
like you said, you're on this high and it was devastating. And did it get to a point where there was blame or and kind of how did you move forward with that? Because I'm sure from the male's perspective, you're like, okay, well, it's because of me. How did that make you feel going forward and not being able to? I'm sure
I hope you didn't give her any blame or anything or.
No, so she has never made me feel guilty, but I definitely have issues with this subject because I feel that way. I feel that it's my fault, and I can joke about it in a jovial type of way, and I can also be serious about it, and it doesn't cause a problem. But in the back of my mind, I do feel kind of guilty that it's kind of my fault, right? And given that the other challenges in her family that there have been with giving birth, but she's never made me feel that way. So I give her a lot of credit for that.
For me, it was never, ever his fault.
Right.
I would never blame him. He had cancer. He didn't do something stupid. He didn't make some stupid choices or that led to it. It was nothing he could help. He overcame his disease and he crushed it. He did an excellent job. Oh, I would much rather have him. But then too, also, I mean, sure, maybe it was his end why we couldn't, get pregnant, but who's to say that something wouldn't have happened while I was pregnant or,
Absolutely.
So it's just, so for me, it was never a question about putting any blame on him because I honestly don't have any blame towards him.
I'm the type of person, I put a lot of pressure on myself for the few things that I think are really important to me. And so, you're talking about how you don't have to have like the perfect family doesn't necessarily have to have kids. But, I would say I probably felt that way or still kind of think that it's something that I haven't been able to do in my life. I've heard some women say that they enjoyed being pregnant. Because there's different feelings, there's different hormones. It's a part of life. But most women say, giving birth is not exciting. Not the greatest feeling thing in the world. But in the back of my mind, I feel kind of bad for her. That she probably is. If it continues to go how we've planned or how we've discussed, she's never going to get to experience pregnancy or birth. And I feel bad about that too. To be honest with you.
Right. Yeah.
I think you're putting too much blame on yourself, though.
Right.
Really.
Right. I mean,
I
listen.
I think that's an added pressure from a male's.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But you had to first save your life so you can enjoy life, and now here you are with your wife. So it's it happens. I mean, you had to fight to get here.
We have to see the positive.
Right.
We have to see the positive. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
and I see him do that every day. I see him out there making a difference in the world and doing what he can to make that positive impact. And yeah.
And that's perfect.
And everybody's family is differently defined.
Yep.
Society, again, that's those societal things, pressures that we put on ourselves, and we plant that seed in our mind, and then it's hard when we can't do it. But that's society's image. Like she said, your family started, you and her are a family. So absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So
kudos to you guys.
Exactly. And that's a huge thing.
Crushing it.
For sure. That's a huge thing to overcome. And I really want to take my hats off to you guys, because that's a blessing that you guys have so much love and faith in God to be able to overcome something like that, because this is not a small thing. This is huge. And you guys are just handling it and dealing with it. So it just and I just met you guys, and I can just feel the love and the warmth, and
that's you
feels
said,
good.
It's also like understanding the biggest compromise. Why, right? Like if you're gonna compromise on the small things, it's the big things that really matter. And I think having you as a spouse is bigger than society's pressure of, well, when are you going to start a family?
Right.
So understanding where the love comes from, and having her to back you.
And
Absolutely.
and I want to touch on the impact, because talk to me more about that, because you have a podcast. Speaking of impact, and what else do you do? Because you do quite a few things.
I wear a couple different hats. I'm a bit of a scatterbrain. I think, and so I'll tell you what I do, and I think it'd be appropriate to share a story of why these things mean a lot to both of us.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I do host a podcast called the Speaking of Impact podcast, and it's really about people doing the things that they love and using their skills and things that they've been blessed with for positive change in the world. And we love talking with people who are super passionate about something, and they're using their gifts to be able to chase that dream. So that's what the podcast is about. And it came about because for 5 years I was trying to start a podcast. In my old role, I recently resigned from my position. This is kind of crazy timing at my old company, and I had such a great time working there. I learned so much. I owe a lot to them, but because of the financial industry that we were in, I was a little restricted on what I could do. So I wasn't actually allowed to start a podcast for quite a while. And then with the whole pandemic and everything that happened last year, I was like, listen, I need a way to communicate with people. So maybe because of what's going on now, maybe can I do this? And it was actually allowed. I was approved to do it, but I wasn't allowed to talk anything financial.
Okay.
And my initial reaction was, well, it's not going to be very helpful for my job. But I realized it wasn't really about that at all. That people want to communicate about positive messages. And so we came up with the show, Speaking of Impact. We've recorded about 40 episodes now. It started last June, and it's been a tremendous, tremendous experience. And the support that I've got from her along the way has been great. It's kind of been a dream of mine. And to be honest with you, I don't know where it's going, but it's been going well. And that's the podcast that we do. My business partner and I started an organization of our own financial firm. And we provide modern financial management for purpose-driven families that want to make a positive impact. So my whole life is around this word impact. I got a book coming out soon too. And it's amazing. I was one-track mind for 12 years doing one thing. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden this entrepreneurial, scatterbrain spirit has come out of me. So I appreciate you bringing those things up.
Oh,
it's funny. It seems as though, you I spent my entire life doing, so you're no longer there, right? You quit. You're not working at your old job.
I quit.
But it's hard for you to even say it, right? You're like, oh, I still can't say. So you still can't talk about it.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I talk with one of my colleagues a lot, and he's a little bit different type of person. He's a little bit more of conservative is not the right word, but he doesn't want to take a leap like that. And it was quite a risk for us to do this, but it feels so good, so freeing.
Right.
I can't explain to you how that is. And she supported me, but I know that that's not her personality. I mean, she's tremendous at what she does. And I don't see you. No, this is not a shot. I don't see you leaving your job as a kindergarten teacher to start your own school anytime soon. You're in your zone.
I can't, because you now started a new thing.
Yeah. So we need your income.
She has to have the impact. She has to have the
right.
She has to be grounded.
And I saw your Instagram page. You great with those kids.
But if she wanted to, you would support her, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because she supported me for longer than she even has known me. And I brought this up a minute ago because this story is super appropriate. And if you'll allow me a minute or two to tell it, I think you'll appreciate it. So we talked a little bit about my cancer, and I usually tell this story from a perspective of my own, really, because it's certainly appropriate. I think for her, it's the way she was supporting me through that time is really, really important. So when I was 18, I went up to college. And I don't know, I mean, Jason, you were an 18-year-old male at one point.
Yep.
And I don't know about you, but at that point I felt invincible. I thought I could take on the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I know it's not the case at all. But I thought I was. So I was going up to Hofstra University in Long Island, New York. I was going to go back to Long Island where I was born in New York, where most of my family, all of my family is from. So it was a great experience. And I was in training camp for football, and they thought I had this groin injury. And one thing led to another, and they were doing all these tests on me. And I was in the training room doing these silly exercises to try to rehab what I thought was this groin injury. And one day, now when you go from high school to college, the training room is a completely different experience.
Absolutely.
Being like
Right.
one or two students, right, and a few pieces of tape. It's like hundreds of people on the team, a whole staff, doctors. It was crazy. So
And the workout room is like as big as your house, so you like have all this space to work out. And
yeah, exactly, right? So it's 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning before our first practice of the day, and I would be in there, and I'm on a stool with a three-wheeled stool, and I'm shimmying across from one end of the training room to the other, and it's like 25, 30 yards. It's a huge room, and I'm dodging people, and that's really part of the exercise. And it was really challenging. Like, believe it or not, it was really hard, especially when you had this injury. And so one day the trainer, God bless him, stands up and says, and it's a commotion in the morning, right? It kind of helps you wake up for practice at that early in the morning.
Uh-huh.
But it seemed like at this point, the whole room went silent, right? And Rick stands up. I don't know how the timing was impeccable. And he's like, Bobby, why are you still in here? Like, you need to get on the field. And when you're an 18-year-old who thinks he's invincible and the trainer calls you out, you're like, oh man, like this is not cool. Well, and I basically yelled at him. I was like, Rick, but something is not right. I can't even run. So he took me into another room. We had a private conversation. He actually sent me to the doctor. And so another series of tests, and my parents were supposed to come up for my first game it was a Saturday, college football on a Saturday. They came up on a Thursday. I just got out of an appointment with the doctor, and in that appointment, he sat me down, 18-year-old by himself in a strange place. Bobby, you have cancer.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. So my parents call me from the car on their way back, on their way to my uncle's house where we were going to meet. And my mom's like, oh, how'd it go? And I was like, I had to tell her, that I had cancer, and she flips out, and you can hear my dad in the background, like, Susan, what's going on? What's going on? So anyway, we get back to my uncle's house. Both of us, we meet there, and we shed tears and cried, and we were like, what are we going to do? So the next couple of days were like a blur. But on Saturday, so a couple of days later, we're at my uncle's house, and his best friend comes over, and he gives my parents his keys to his car. And he's like, listen, Bob, Susan, I can't imagine what you're going through. Your son is 18. He's diagnosed with cancer. You can have my car for as long as you need it, whatever you need. So they're like flabbergasted. They're like, I can't believe this guy's giving us his car. And he leaves like 15 minutes later. He wanted to go spend some time with his family. He said hi to my uncle. And said, got to go. So we have this car. The following week, we're going to need to go and take all these tests. Speaking of sperm banking, that's one of the things we had to do, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I took my first college class on that Monday. My oncologist said, you can't just do nothing. You have to stay engaged, right? So I took my first college class, goes well. We went to a doctor, came back next day, Tuesday morning, go on my second ever college class. I come out of the class. I'm in the cafeteria right over there eating something for breakfast. And if you remember, before we had flat screen TVs, we had those tube TVs, square. Well, it's hanging from the corner up in the cafeteria there. And I'm watching the news. And a plane comes around and hits the Twin Towers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? So I call my dad. He's like, hey, did you see what just happened? The plane hit the Twin. I was like, yeah, I'm watching the news. And then bam, another one hits. And he's like, all right, you better come back to your uncle's house now. I don't know what's going on. So I hopped in the car. Took me 9 hours to drive what would normally take 15 minutes.
Wow.
And I ran out of gas in my uncle's neighborhood. So this whole time I'm watching the Twin Towers I'm in New York now, so I can see in the very, very, very distance, I can see the smoking towers. And I have a broadcast degree. And when I was in grad school after I graduated, while we were engaged, I was studying broadcast journalism. So I have a broadcast journalism degree. I will never listen to 9 straight hours of AM radio ever again in my life.
Yeah, I bet.
Never. So we pushed the car into the driveway, and we couldn't get a hold of my uncle. And he was supposed to fly back from Denver that morning. And eventually he calls, because my aunt was beside herself. And he's like, everything's okay, but we can't get a hold of Tim, his best friend. And it turns out Tim was in the towers, the guy who gave us the car, and he perished.
Wow.
And so once again, on this crazy high a couple of weeks before that, and all of a sudden, like, the world's coming to an end. Tim lost his life. I've got cancer. 9/11 happened. All these things happened. And we had to go through all of this stuff. Well, I tell you this whole story because I don't know how I got through all that, to be honest with you. I thought I was going to be the best cancer patient in the world, and I just powered through.
Right.
But it took me years to figure out that it wasn't just me, that there were other forces, and lots of prayer and family and support.
Absolutely.
But it turns out, so when Trisha and I were talking one night, and after 9 p.m. with 3 minutes, it was probably like 2 a.m, to be honest with you.
This was by the time we
completely.
were close to being engaged, I think. Like we knew that we wanted to be with each other.
We were getting pretty serious at this point. And so we're talking, and she was telling me the story about how when she was in high school, when she was a junior in high school, she had a class with one of these teachers, and this teacher early on in the school year stood up in front of the class and was like, hey class, I really want you all to think about your future spouses. And occasionally we're going to pray for them.
And then that was a little odd to hear, your junior year of high school. Like I'm looking, everyone's kind of like not avoiding eye contact.
Right.
Your future spouse, like what is that? Like I'm like hoping it wasn't the kid next to me that was picking his nose, right?
Right.
But yeah, so this teacher, Mr. Zill, my favorite teacher in high school, he said, no, it's really important that you guys now start praying for your future spouse, even though you're nowhere near ready to get married or anything, but that's something that you should be thinking about. And so it was something that I started doing, and I didn't know what to pray for. I didn't know who I was praying for, but I would just pray that wherever he was safe, he was happy, and that he was healthy. And so when I was telling Bobby that story over the phone late one night, he kind of started asking more questions about it. And I said, when was that? And I said, well, it would have been my junior year of high school, like that fall. And we did the math. We determined that was when he was going through cancer.
Wow.
So
how amazing.
I didn't know him at the time, didn't know anything about his life or what struggles he was going through, but there I was able to pray for him, pray that he was healthy and happy and safe. And
yep. So she was doing that and not even knowing me. So we're 2 years apart, and I was a freshman in college. She was a junior in high school. And so so the support that she's given me for all of my struggles and craziness over the years, whether it's me starting a business or even before she knew me when I was dealing with cancer. So
she had to pray for you so that you could become her future husband. See?
Yeah.
There's
So it paid off.
The powers of the universe. Well, with Jason and I, we always say there's one mind.
That's
meaning the mind of God. There's just one God. And things that we think are crazy or unrelated, everything is always related. And because God knows, it's always related somehow or intertwined with someone else. That's amazing. That's wonderful.
It is wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Great story. I bet she prays for you now too. I wish Lord help me deal with him.
Oh yeah, she prays for me and probably herself too.
Yes, Lord, give me strength. Right, Trisha.
Amen. You got it.
Okay.
Well, so yeah, that was like a mind blowing experience that night when we were talking.
I know. Crazy. I can imagine. That's like mind blowing right now.
Yeah.
Like, what are the odds, right?
But that's kind of an odd conversation to have in, junior year in high school. Like, pray for your future spouse. Like,
it was what our teacher was just very passionate about us and coming up with different ways, I think, to pray, different ways, different things to pray about. I went to a Christian school, and so that was prayer, and in our faith, like that was daily conversations that we would have with our teachers. And so, yeah, I was able to tell him a few years back, we connected on Facebook, my teacher and I was able to tell him that story about how his advice really paid off. And that was really cool. I think he went on to share that story then with his class that he was teaching like later that day. And so it was really neat to be able to thank him and to tell him what a difference that prayer had made for us.
It's the little things, it's the little decisions. It's just those little things in life. You never know how that little thing, ties into your life until it actually shows up some years later.
That's amazing. That's wonderful.
It is.
Yeah.
All right.
I look back at all those things that were supporting me. It's just amazing how I got through that time. And that was just like the icing on the cake, right? I mean, when we heard that story. So I appreciate you giving us an opportunity to share that. It was coming out like we were going in that direction. I was like,
no, that's wonderful. I'm glad for sharing.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm glad that you shared that with us. That's definitely something that it's nice to know. I'm glad that you felt comfortable enough to share it with us. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been a great time.
It's interesting though that everyone knows what they were doing and where they were at when 9/11 happened. I was dropping my daughter off at preschool at the daycare, and the first plane had hit, and then I dropped her off and I came back, and then I was supposed to go to a client's place, but I ended up watching the television, and then boom, the other one hit. It's like, so I'm just like paralyzed, just kind of sitting there watching the television, and we couldn't move, and then after that, everything else happened.
Kind of escalated,
Yeah, everyone knows. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like you were going through that all at the same time, and that is just a lot to deal with.
I was here at home.
Yep.
I was at home, and my boys, they go to school just like a block away. So we were at the time, my sister was working for us, and we were here at the house because we work from home, and we were watching it and listening. And then after they were saying that it was a terrorist attack, then I was like, well, maybe. And then they were talking about, letting the kids out, sending kids home because they didn't know where the conversation, right. The conversation was that they're going to hit another big city.
Right.
So, so I kind of walked. I kind of walked through. I don't remember if you were with me or not, but they're like in walking distance. Like there's a little gateway or whatever. So I went over to the school and there were parents picking up their kids. So we picked them up and we brought them home. And I don't even think they understood what was going on.
No.
I think they may have been in second and third grade at that time.
I think so.
Yeah. So first and second or something like that. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really crazy, and we were thinking at that time, like, what is the world coming to?
Right.
But now I look at what we're in now, and I'm like, well, this is what we were headed to. Like, how crazy is this pandemic, right?
It's almost 20 years since then too. It's crazy.
Yeah.
This pandemic thing, it's way worse because it's affecting people prematurely that may have had a life expectancy of 80, 90 years. Now they're gone at 37, 47, 27. It has affected so many lives unnecessarily. It's just crazy. But
it's definitely different times.
No, it's definitely different. And us having this family that lives over in China, we had a unique perspective on it too. It's just amazing, like the stories from different areas, and I can't believe here we're over a year and we're still.
I thought this would be over by the end of the year, last year.
You guys are a little bit more open there in Florida. A little bit. My boys, they live there. They're in Tallahassee, but they're here now for the time being since the pandemic. But initially last year when they were there and everything was as normal, and we're really worried here, and we're like, okay, this is really happening and people are actually dying and not knowing. I think that the biggest thing was not really understanding or not getting the information as to how to protect yourself, what's causing it, who is it going to affect, who is it going to hit. So some of the things like that. And then some of the things you were hearing were really devastating and kind of scary. So, you were seeing pictures of people who were actually really suffering and not being able to breathe, and, and seeing the death tolls go up, and it was just crazy, and it still is crazy. So I can't wait to we have a new norm. So
I need to get out of the house. That's what I need to do.
So did they close the schools, Trisha? Did you come home for a while? And
they did, yes. So it was a crazy time for us with our family from China. Like, they were the first to shut down, and so my family came here to stay with us because everything was still open at the time and the kids, they could play outside and everything here. So we had my family live with us for the first 2 months of the pandemic. My brother, my sister flew over here with their 3 kids. And then my brother-in-law was going to stay out there for a week or so to kind of wrap up some things. They've got pets and things like that to figure out plans with. But then that was when airlines started pulling out of Shanghai. And so my brother-in-law decided to fly out the next day, and he was on the last Delta flight out of Shanghai here. And so they were here with us for those first 2 months. And I was still teaching. I was still teaching like normal. That was before we shut down here in the States. Right. And then when we shut down, you
probably didn't even see that coming, right? So they were like, "Oh, we're shutting down, so come here and we're fine." And then next thing you go, like, "Wow, we're shutting down."
Yeah. Then we got shut down, and then they got stuck. They got stuck here. They got stuck in the States for 7.5 months. So they stayed here with us. They had a good friend of theirs who had a home over on the west coast of Florida that they rent out through Airbnb, or that kind of style. And they opened up that house to them. So then my family went over there for another 2 months to stay, not knowing, they probably had their flights changed 20 different times to try to get back to where they live. Then they ended up going up to Michigan and staying with my mom. But yeah, so then it was just kind of crazy. So yeah, so my school, we, like everybody else, shut down. I finished the school year teaching virtually for my students, for my kindergartners, which not the easiest thing to do, kindergartners entertained on Zoom. But they rocked it. They did a great job. But then the beginning of the school year, we opened, but we gave parents the option to have their kids be virtual or in the classroom. And so I started the year with 20 kindergartners. I have 14 in the classroom and 6 virtual. I'm gaining another virtual students returning this coming week for me. So slowly we're starting to get back to normal. But I would want to say about half of the students at our school came back to campus when we first opened in August, and the other half remained virtual. And so
I give her a lot of credit, because it's like almost teaching 2 classes. She's putting in a lot of work to get the audio visuals ready, plus getting the work prepared for the virtual students before to send it out to them beforehand. And let me just say that 2-month period. Now, my sister and brother-in-law, they're both teachers. So it was, and my mother-in-law, she was retired, but she's a teacher. So the 4 of them plus the 3 students, and my mom was actually with us at the time. So there were 9 of us in the house, and at any given time there could easily be 7 classrooms going on. It was it was incredible. Like every room in the house had a different student or teacher in it, and I was trying to get work done. And we it's all love. We had a blast doing it. But it was pretty hectic there.
Somebody was on Zoom at every single hour of the day, because they were dealing, my sister and her brother and her husband, they were dealing with other students that got scattered across the world. And so they're trying to cater to their teaching. And so they would have classes in the middle of the night. I would have my stuff with my students in the morning. My nieces and nephew would have 3 different schedules with different
quite
Zoom meetings.
Stressful, right? Quite. I understand, all in love, but I'm sure it was quite stressful.
Yeah.
How did that, so with her coming home and you guys like being together, but I guess it's a difference because she was busy.
Right.
There were a lot of couples that were locked in and just had nothing to do.
Right.
So they were just like with each other, right, 24/7, and that kind of gets to be kind of stressful too. So with all of the chaos going on, did it put an extra strain on you guys? Come on, be honest.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm going to say for sure. But it's interesting you say that, though. It's a different type of stress. It wasn't like it was just the 2 of us like, okay, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Like,
right. It was the total opposite.
It was the total opposite. There was so much going on. In fact, I think there were a couple times where it was probably stressful because we weren't like communicating with each other, because we were trying to help each other's family out. And we probably got into a couple of disagreements because we didn't talk about anything.
Yeah. I would probably the biggest thing. Yeah, it was just trying to make it work. It was really, to say that it was stressful for us is an understatement compared to the stress that it was on my sister and her family. They left their home thinking they were going to be gone for 2-3 weeks tops, and it ended up being 7.5 months, and where they just couldn't get back. So there was a huge amount of stress on their end. And so I think for us, just trying to make sure they had what they needed, trying to help out with the kids, trying to create before the lockdown here, trying to give my sister and my brother-in-law the opportunity to go out, the two of them, just trying to help out in whatever way we could. Just
we sacrificed our relationships to help them.
To a lot of
but looking back, we I don't want to say we drew apart, but we really, I mean, gosh, when was the last time we had a date night, just the two of us? I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
We talked about that too. Trisha's looking at. We talked about that too, Trisha. How men have to realize they have to share. It's kind of hard, right?
Yeah, we don't share.
You know, it's funny because I can relate. Like even without saying it, I can relate because I'm the youngest, and I have three older sisters and one brother, but I'm really close with my sisters. So
really close.
So it's like when Jason and I first got married, they were over here like all the time.
Like every time I turned on the grill, everyone showed up.
So it's like it was the neighbors were wondering like how many of you guys actually live there,
Right.
because my sisters were always here, and I think it got to a point with my sisters and their spouses, with our spouses. They don't like to share too much. My sister would come home and say, it was before, cell phones were really popular. And she would come home and she would say, well, who called me today? Or did anybody call me? And he goes, yeah, the same people who call you every day, your sister 500 times, something like that. Oh, we're going over to my sister's house again. Like, can we just not see them?
Right.
And I'm like, well, that's my family,
Yeah.
So, well, you have the opposite, you want to see your family, but I think men kind of get used to just us. Even though they're always with us, they don't want to share when other people want us to. Like, it's kind of hard. And it's not selfish. I don't know. It's kind of just, I don't know how they're made.
I like company, but not all the time.
Now my sisters moved away, which I'm really sad. They moved away. So I'm the only one left here in cold Illinois.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, well, my sister's going to come, next month. And he's like, why?
I said, oh, is she staying here?
So, and he has me every single day.
Yeah.
24 hours a day, but yet.
It's like I pick up another wife when they come. So.
Is that a headache?
I won't say. I won't say a headache. It's just another wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not a headache, baby.
I don't know, men, and it will. Family does put a strain in your relationship.
Yeah.
So I guess
Good. I mean, I love my in-laws. I mean, if I needed anything or if we needed anything, they would be there at the drop of a hat. So
it's all in love, but they
it's
still
all
don't like
love.
to share.
Right.
So when
We definitely have been very blessed with amazing in-laws, I think, on both ends. Like, I can honestly say, like, I love Bobby's parents. I love his family, his aunts and uncles, cousins. And same goes. I
Absolutely.
Mine.
I mean, I think we got some weirdos, but they're all.
See, you should have didn't investigate before you said I do, right? You was like, that's your cousin who? It's a little weird.
No, to be honest with you, this is not. I mean, this is kind of funny, but I'm not even joking. I know that I am by far the strangest person in my family. So if she's with me, then I know she's not going to have a problem with the rest of the family. And that's
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, she says it all the time. Like, I'm the strangest person that she knows. I have some quirky habits, and I know that. Like, even my dad. Like, I've definitely overheard you and my dad talking about me. Like, what did this weirdo do this time? Right?
This is very accurate. Yes.
So anyway,
That's funny.
Yeah, your parents are probably shocked that you got someone so sane. They probably thought you were going to get a really crazy, quirky wife, right?
my mom, when I told her that we were getting married, when was this? I think it was when I was going to look for a ring. My mom actually came with me when I was going to shop for the ring that I got to propose to Trisha with. And that was a funny story too, because the person at the jeweler thought that she was the one. And I'm like, no, that's not. So that's another story. The interesting thing though was I remember my mom and I having this conversation, and pretty much telling me that, listen, it's really, really good. Like, I really approve and love Trisha because I can tell that she's got the patience to deal with you in so many ways.
And only a mom can say that. Absolutely.
And be
We
totally
know.
honest.
We know.
Yeah.
And be totally honest.
So yeah, I think our parents' reactions when they found out that we were going to be married was pretty supportive. So
Definitely.
All right,
so,
Trisha.
I don't know, do you all remember how your parents reacted when you guys were getting married?
Oh, okay. So I'll start. My mom loved her. My dad was indifferent. He didn't. It was
Dads
fine.
are just like they don't care. Dads really don't care.
If
They
you're
go
happy, I'm happy. But
Right.
my mom, she loved Tina while we were dating. Everything was just wonderful, right? I said I was getting married. My mom didn't want to even be in the same room with Tina.
Oh man.
My great uncle had to talk to my mom and tell her to come back into the reception after we got married. And
I think it was the opposite for my parents.
oh yeah, they love
My mom was fine, but then my dad,
yeah,
he was not happy at all.
No, he wasn't.
So it was
Really?
funny because at the reception, so they had a drinking area, which was outside of where our room was. So they were both, my dad and his mom were outside at the bar drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny, they didn't know each other. So my dad had never really met his mom. So they knew of each other, but they had never really talked or met.
Right.
And so they're at the bar saying, he was upset. He was like expressing to her that, I don't understand, why she's marrying him. And then little did he know, like, he's like, so they had knew of each other. Did he even know that was your mom?
No, because my mom looked like it would have been Tina's mom. So everybody thought, especially when we moved into the house, that was her mother. Like, no, that's my mother. So no, just if my mom's sitting somewhere else, no one really knew.
See, my dad doesn't live here. Right. My dad lives in Puerto Rico.
So,
Okay.
right. So they're sitting there talking, and my mom looks nothing like me. So it's just, yeah. So he wouldn't have known.
So he was telling her, talking about it, and she goes, "Well, that's my son you're talking about." So, and I don't know. So it was so funny. They were both out there drinking about us getting married, and so. But,
oh my God.
But after that, now
because my mom and dad weren't together, and they weren't married, and his parents weren't married. So,
but the funny thing was, I think it was because my mom thought that she was going to lose me as a son, more so than anything. It wasn't that she disliked Tina; she just was like, my other sisters had married and moved on. Then I was going to marry and move on. And then she wouldn't really have anyone.
Yeah, because
right?
he was the last one at home.
I was the last one. I was the youngest. So once we purchased the house, I had a discussion with Tina. I was like, "Hey, I would like for Madea to move in with
his
us."
mom.
And she said, "Okay." And I was like, "You sure?" And she said, "Yes."
Oh, well, it was long before that. So, yeah,
No,
we had an apartment. Well, I'm saying long before your mom started liking me.
Oh, yeah,
Back liking me.
Oh, yeah, that was because of the grandkids. When the grandkids came, then, everything was...
Right, so that only lasted, what?
Yeah, it was
so
just
we got married in 91. So 2 years later. So 2 years later...
She started liking it because, one, she understands that she was not losing a son, but she was great and gaining a daughter-in-law. Yeah. So things was like, okay, hey, this is great. And then,
she came back around.
Oh yeah, she was fine. And once she found out that I wasn't gonna abandon her at all, and then once we moved in,
I think she really thought that like most guys do, you kind of lose your son to the other family.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to look at it, though. She's gaining a daughter-in-law, not losing a son.
Right. Yeah. And so she really.
Oh, no, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. I think for us, it kind of for us, we were living with Bobby's mom for a year and a half. So we got to taper. She got to kind of taper off of, of having him.
I am a mama's boy, so.
So was I.
Yes. A mother's boy. A mama's boy.
But I must say, once my mom moved in, she didn't side with me as much. She sided with Tina more than me, and I didn't understand that. So I'm like, if you're going to take sides, I'm the side you need to take, not Tina's.
Yeah, so I think she was really worried at first that probably, again, she wasn't going to see him or whatever. But then once we got married and a few months down the road, probably 8 months into it.
Oh, yeah.
Then she started coming around. Then when I got pregnant, he was like, "Oh, my mom sent you some dinner." And I'm like, we're okay, but we're not seeing each other. Like, he would still see her and everything. And, we were cordial, but it wasn't like we were the best of friends. But but then we got back to ourselves once I got pregnant, and then the grandkids came, and then every all was forgiven.
Yeah.
And actually, I totally understand how she felt having boys.
Yep.
So once my boys grew up and started dating, and then people would say, "Tina, I don't think anybody's going to be good enough for your boys." And I was like, "No, I don't think that's true." Yeah. But I totally understand from a mom's perspective with her son. Yeah, I kind of see that.
Especially mama's boy. So yeah, that's how it happens. So,
but
she loved it.
We're really blessed. Our families get along really well.
Yep. Yeah, we don't have any issues.
Even though he wants me to himself, and I'm sure my sisters, my brother-in-laws, they every time we get together, they always want them to themselves. I think they can only handle us a little bit at a time.
Yeah. So, it's just a lot.
How long are they going to be here?
Yep.
3 weeks, 4 weeks. No. So just a little bit at a time.
That's true.
Funny.
So
Funny.
as we close it up, what is some advice that you would give couples? I don't want to say newlyweds or people who have been married 5 or 10 years, but what would the advice be that you could give someone that could help them through challenges that they may be facing?
I would say find out what works best for the two of you, not what works best for everybody. Kind of how we talked before about learning how to argue. Like, if you need to go to bed angry, okay, do it. If that's what's going to help you guys the next day. It's so easy to hear advice from all these different people and then trying to do what everybody else is expecting of you, but then it's not what's best for the two of you. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful advice.
Yeah.
How about you, Bobby?
Yeah, I would say it's similar. For me, it's truly is communication. And I was having a conversation with someone about this the other day, and I realized that it kind of relates to everything going on in our world right now with the pandemic and social issues and political strife and all the things going on. It's vitally important to understand other people's perspective, and it starts in the home and with your spouse and your kids and your family. It's understand what is relevant to them and what means the most to them. That doesn't mean you have to agree every single time, but you have to at least acknowledge that their perspective could potentially, and a lot of times it is different. And so communication will enable you to do that and be comfortable sharing with each other what is most important.
Wonderful.
Even if you're concerned that they may not agree.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Good advice. Good advice. It has definitely been a pleasure. Thank
Yes,
you
it
guys
has.
for
Thank
saying
you
yes.
so much for saying yes.
So how about you tell us where we can get your podcast and any other information that you would like to share with our listeners?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Trisha Instagram is Mrs. DePasquale is her teacher page. So if you're a teacher or a parent who wants some cool, fun stuff to do with your kids.
All right, let's say that
check it
again
out.
and then spell everything out for us.
It's
Yeah.
Mrs. So MRS and then DePasquale, DePasquale. Yeah, if you're looking for ways to engage your students, I love taking my students around the world on trips and imaginary trips to different countries. And so, yeah, so you can check that out if that's something you are interested in.
Yep. And you can check it out there. And then just about everything for me, podcast, blog, is bobdepasquale.com, BOBDEPASQUALE.com. You can find the Speaking of Impact podcast, the E-Impact blog, and that's all information there. And my company is initiateimpact.com is my business. But check us out there. We're open. DMs are open everywhere. We love talking to people. So thank you all for really honestly having us and just this has been really fun, honestly.
It's been really good to go back and kind of think back to those early days and kind of what defined us. Like some of the questions you asked us were things that I have not thought about before. And now I can see like, wow, yeah, that's, kind of how we got to where we are.
Honestly, this is this is very cathartic.
Right.
For us as well.
You'd be surprised. One of the things that Jason and I know we're closing this out. One of the things that Jason and I realized, like, we're taking a class right now, and you kind of just think things happen just because they happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, well, I think you were attracted to me because, like, I'm a lot like your mom. I think so it was just like really funny when we really think about it. I'm like, okay, she's kind of aggressive, kind of a little spark like I am. Her birthday's in April like mine. She's fair skinned like me. I'm like your mom and myself have a lot of qualities.
And because they were saying it was, it's something in your past. Normally it's your caretaker. You marry your caretaker or likeness of, or some instance
Variation,
in your life.
something that you didn't get as a child. You're looking for that in your partner as you get older.
And
Sure.
we started talking, and I was like, now here it is. We're working on 30 years here, right? And then we're just having this conversation now. And she's like, well, maybe. And I'm like, you know what? It's a possibility. All the traits that I like about you, and, have some issues with, they're kind of like my mom. So because we like them in the beginning, and then after a while, it's like, okay, yeah, you're a little bit too strong.
Or like I was telling Jason, I said, I think you're a lot like my mom and not like my dad. So traits that drew me to him would be that what I liked about him is that he's kind of level-headed. He doesn't like to argue. He's kind of sits back and just qualities. But then
I
told
all
him
these scenarios in my head.
But then I asked him, I said, well, what is the main thing that I really don't like that you do that I don't like about you? And he's like, that I don't speak up enough. And I'm like, exactly. Like my mom was like that. So it's like, if we start really analyzing some of the things that drew us to our mate, we can kind of draw similarities between our caregivers, our parents, and our mate that we really never thought of before. We just thought we picked this person just for the simple fact of picking them, right?
Yeah.
It
was a blind date anyway. Well, it wasn't really a blind date.
No, we weren't a blind date.
No.
We weren't a date at all.
Yeah. The best friend from college was going to see her friend, and her friend told my friend that she wouldn't be interested in me. So I said, I'm going. I'm going to go over there, and I'm coming over there just to talk smack. So I'm like, I'm going to show her. I don't need her. And then we end up hitting it off, and then they end up breaking up.
Taking the time to kind of think about things of our past that really kind of not only dictated our future, but kind of dictates who we are drawn to in a mate, and, those qualities that may resemble our families. And then, again, things that we do differently that add flavor, I guess, to the relationship, right? We won't say conflict. We'll add flavor to the relationship.
Flavor.
Yeah, we got a lot of flavor.
So it's really been fun, though, guys. I really do appreciate you guys taking the time out and speaking with us. So that wraps up another episode of Love and Beyond the I Do podcast.
And once again, we're in it to win it.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Lovin' Beyond the I Do podcast. Head over to iTunes to subscribe and leave a review. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Legendary Relationship, or visit our website at legendaryrelationship.com. Till next time, remember to make every day count.